part of what the council is going to discuss is how their meetings are going to be run and just discuss that amongst themselves. And I'm sure it's up to Mark if they want to take input, but Lori called and she can't make it. Gina's not feeling well. Lori had a work issue she had to go take care of. And Roger Cody will not be here tonight either. But when we get ready to do with the budget, we'll talk about some other things, but it's up to you.
All right. Well, Vern already gave some good input on how he feels, and Roger, do you have any feeling on how meetings are run, or we need to change anything there?
I tell you the truth, since Fern did all the talking, I like the way I'd go along more.
Okay.
And there's just one thing, is there is gonna be times when, and this is gonna have to be discretion, maybe one of us council will say, I'd like to hear from somebody, whatever. But once in a great while, not too often, we'll take, there might be we might know somebody. It's like when we wanted information about the insurance thing from Michelle.
Yeah,
Like that.
absolutely. And there's
Other than that, you're right.
Yeah. And I think we'll have to have this discussion again when we have a full council
Yeah.
here, because we really
Yeah.
can't make the decision with just the three of us.
But-
And it's really not, it's not more of a decision, I don't think, Mark. It's
Right.
more the idea of going back to actually fulfilling what the original intent was of our meeting rules. I mean, really, if you look at that meeting rules, our meeting rules basically state that, we're having a business meeting, and there's an opportunity for, audience participation, and it's in the proper location. And during the meeting, as a council, either one of us as a council people can address the chair, it has to have an individual speak. And I think it's usually a consensus of the council at that point, like Roger
Yeah.
said, whether or not we feel that it's doable. So I mean, I don't think we need to really vote on changing something. I think we just need to actually maybe reassure with the council that we want to go back and fulfill what our meeting rules were from the beginning, so.
Yeah, well, I'll try to tighten things up a bit then.
Yeah.
If there are any substantive changes we would make, I think we can move on to our budget presentations here then.
Roger's idea about the shock collar is not a bad idea, but I mean, I think it might hurt.
Well, I guess while you have everybody here that's here, what do you want to highlight about your meeting rules? Nobody's really said.
Well,
anything
highlight
specific.
that, basically, the audience participation, when it's gonna be audience participation.
And not during the time you're addressing.
No, when we're talking about other things, no. If one of us, or if we have talked about it, and we want somebody to address a certain, then we will do it. But
So
other than
your
that,
recommendation is when you have things on the consent agenda or orders and resolutions, topics, you do not want audience participation, because that is in your rules, that the chair
Right.
has the authority to ask, to allow that.
Correct.
But if you don't want to do that,
now
you should
what,
say that
like when
specifically.
we do something, and every time, like we would go to vote on something, we do this, then you say, then you have to say,
The audience wants to speak
yeah.
around.
Typically, that's strictly Mark's courtesy that he actually puts out.
Okay.
It's not, you gotta really understand the tenets, especially if you go to a school board meeting. Our school board meetings are pretty rigid sometimes, right, when people wanna speak. And it's basically because they're actually conducting a business meeting. And again, the audience there is actually an audience to participate, and they will tell you, hey, look, if you have something to say, there will be an opportunity for you to speak when you get to audience participation. And, it's just really productive. What we really need to do as a council is get more dialogue between the council members and less dialogue between us and people coming in from the audience, which is good information, but yet, if we're not explaining, if we're not communicating in between ourselves,
Right.
we're not really doing what we're supposed to be doing. We don't have the dialogue that we should.
Right, if somebody does want to bring a particular point to us, they can either come to an audience participation, or they can bring it up to either you or I and get it on the agenda, and then speak to us specifically if a person has an issue they want to talk about.
Yeah. Even the other night, and again, and I'm not sure how it's been, but I know like the other night when we actually took something out of the consent agenda and moved it into the regular body of the meeting, I believe to actually, once that agenda is put in place, for any member to actually want that to have done, basically what we have to do is vote as a council to actually change the meeting rules or the form of the rules and bring it in. I mean, I just think there's a lot of formalities that we need to do
Yeah.
that make it look like we actually kind of have a little bit of idea that we're conducting a proper business meeting. You know, so I mean, if someone actually has a concern prior, and it was a legitimate concern, it's more the idea that as a chair, if you address it to the council, that we have concern that we need to move something out of the consent agenda into the regular, you can ask us to vote on that point to do it. That way everybody knows why it's being moved.
Right.
And we're having that discussion, so it's not just, I guess, why are we doing this,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And where it gets put in is really important too, because there's only certain parts of our agenda that we really should be voting on items.
Right.
And we just gotta be careful that if we are gonna move something to a different area, that we bring it to the proper area, so the vote will be a legitimate vote, that's all. But-
I think we also want to be careful with the consent agenda, that we don't put items on there if anyone has questions or discussions on that. You know, it could be really just the routine stuff should go on the consent agenda, not, things that people say, well, I didn't get a chance to discuss that, or I didn't know what I was voting on.
But you know, Mark, one of the things that, and again, this is a dialogue we gotta have, if a counselor gets a packet on Friday, and between Friday to Tuesday, if they don't understand what's on the consent agenda, they really have issues. If they're trying to figure it out that night, I mean, that's a problem. If you pick up your packet on the way in, and you see for the first time that this is on a consent agenda, and you don't understand it, I hate to see it, that council is really not doing their duty to the people they're serving. I mean, they should be looking at it on Friday. I mean, I would only assume as chair that you know what's on the consent agenda come Friday, because you approve it. And then at least by Monday, the other councilors should be able to look at it. If they have a concern about a consent agenda, it should be addressed to you or Steve. So prior to the meeting, because odds are, I mean, if that councilor has a concern, odds are the other councilors may have a concern too, or need to be addressed. So I mean, I hate the idea that sometimes when we get to the meeting, it's kind of like, oh my God, we get this emergency at the meeting because we're discussing something that no one knew anything about, that we actually had our agenda 4 days before. You know, that,
Should
it's
have been
just,
a call on Monday night.
What's that?
Should have been a call on Monday night.
Monday
Rather
during-
than Tuesday, it's 6:45.
Well, but even then, the chair and the vice chair, we try to get the agenda out to them either Thursday or Friday morning for them to approve it, so we can put packets together. Once that's approved, I've been called on the carpet by a counselor because we changed it at the last minute. And so there are times that you're going to have emergency items that do come up
absolutely.
that you have to address. You cannot delay. And we only try to do that when they are emergencies. But according to your own codes here, a council can request something from the consent agenda to be moved down to other business. And that can happen.
You can request a table something.
Exactly, yeah.
Next meeting.
But typically
You get
that,
lost in all those Robert rules.
exactly.
Well,
But
if you follow them, it's
but
quite
they're there for a
easy.
reason. I mean, they're there to make sure that it's actually followed through
You have an
correctly.
itinerary, and as far as the public's concerned, you have an itinerary, and this is where that belongs. If an issue pops up and somebody wants to speak about it, they need to wait for that thing. And if you pleasantly defer them to the proper time in the itinerary from their aspect, then that's what they should do.
Makes it a neat
People
package.
jumping up in the middle of things makes these meetings last forever, and you get sidetracked and segued into other things you really don't want to talk about.
So am I hearing that you're not going to take audience participation during discussions of lists on things on the agenda? Is that what you're saying?
That seems to be the direction that.
So do you want to, I guess my question would be then, do you want to move audience participation just before the consent agenda, so the public, if they see something on the agenda, could make it known
Ahead of time?
ahead of time what their thoughts are, but it has to only pertain to that particular topic?
Yeah, well, that makes sense. That way there, someone has a
Makes
concern.
sense.
yeah.
Right, yeah, I think we should do that, because I don't want people to not be able to speak and then say, oh, you already voted, I can't speak now, so.
Now, you're talking about council meetings?
Council meeting, yes.
The normal council direction.
That makes sense, that way they can talk about it before we even,
Right,
Yeah.
talk about it, then
Yeah.
we can discuss it after hearing what they've had to say.
yeah.
Yeah, just as a point of inquiry, how much prior to Tuesday night's normal meeting is that posted on the site?
It's pretty early. I mean, sometimes I.
It's Friday.
Yeah.
It goes on the website on Friday, and all the councils
Even the
have.
people without internet access can run down to our libraries and do that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if they've got a telephone, they pay for that on their telephone bill.
And we-
Some people don't do that,
and
and
we-
they just wait and pick it up here.
Yeah, we could actually even get to the point where on the bulletin board out front somewhere, we can post it on Friday, just by hang a copy of it. I mean, it's not,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if
you
it's-
can only do so much, because it's not
Exactly.
gonna make everybody happy.
Yeah, mail it out to everyone.
But just like the counselors have a responsibility to go over their packets, there's a responsibility as a citizen to make yourself aware of issues too.
Is
Now, I
Not
have-
just come in here and you go, wow.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
Is this a quorum? There are
Right.
3 council members out of 7 present, and there are 3 budget committee
This is a
members.
workshop.
Right, so we can't take any votes, we don't report.
It's a workshop
We could not
anyways,
take
yeah.
votes now. Right.
We're just
I thought it
talking.
was going to be a budget meeting.
It's a budget workshop, can't vote on anything. So,
It's just discussion.
yeah,
That's all it is.
Council Chair,
Yes.
I was wondering if it would be helpful, since your rules say that a counselor can withdraw something from the consent agenda, to think about letting us know if it's a good idea for me to ask prior to making that motion on the consent agenda, to see if there are any removals. Maybe I can prompt prompt that timing, if
Yeah,
there
I can
is
help
something to be
with
removed.
Yeah, I mean, usually there isn't, but, you know.
I don't know, is that something you'd
Chair,
like done
may
or
I-
not?
One thing I do see from the school meetings that seems very prevalent, I'm not sure, probably because of previous issues, is at the beginning of the meeting, right after roll call, the chair will actually address to Steve or to you, Twyla, and say, is there anything that's going to be changed in our agenda tonight, before the meeting even gets started? It's point of blank, you know, we actually have an agenda, is there any changes to our agenda before we start the meeting?
So something that the chair could do
So the chair could
early on.
actually do, and at that point, either someone on the council could actually say, yes, Chair, I would like to actually see this moved. It's just a point of order, so right at the beginning of the meeting, you know if things are gonna stay in order, instead of halfway through, we try to flag something. Which I think it seems very, hate to say it, the school meetings seem very, very productive at times because they're so rigid. I mean,
They're your meetings.
yeah.
They're your business. This is the time where the council has the opportunity to conduct the business that you need to conduct. And that's, as Don Garrett had said during his whole discussion, that's what you're there for. If the public wants to have something to be discussed, they need to either come to Mark, or come to Lori, or come to me to ask me to put it on the agenda, and then they can approve it or not approve it.
Yeah.
I think that will help you tremendously.
I just think it's really, anything that we do, it's just important that we just stay very consistent with it, because as soon as we allow to go away from our meeting rules, it just, the rest of the night is basically kind of a, it's hard to pull it back in, you know what I mean? And you never know who it's gonna be. We actually had a person that serves on another board that's very rigid, actually causing some of the biggest grief. So, you know, we have to be very rigid.
Now, if something does come up where it gets tabled, should it be set at that time when that will be brought up again?
Generally, it's the next meeting.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
something gets tabled, it usually will be
Yeah, but
brought
you
up
don't- you
at
don't
the
have
next
to assume
meeting.
something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
But-
that's
Should
usually the
we'll
protocol.
table this to the next meeting.
Exactly.
Protocol, unless something
You- you have
happens.
to-
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Like I say, you can get too caught up in Roberts, but
Oh, absolutely.
it has its back value.
If you have time to read Robert's rules, the whole side, if you.
It's there when you need to move,
Yeah.
we're just sort of guessing now what it is.
Exactly.
There are a few old birds.
Right top to bottom, yeah.
Exactly.
And they're not afraid to call you out on it
I
either.
spent many hours on the internet looking at the website going, okay, this.
You're allowing it, you're just allowing it at a
A
different
lot of
place.
variables in there.
Absolutely.
You're just gonna put it just before the consent agenda.
Okay, I think that makes sense, you know, reconstruction of our meeting order, that we can still speak first, but then we can do our business without constant interruptions. That works for me.
It'll keep you focused on the point at hand, you know.
You'll have to vote on it anyway as a whole council at your next
Then
meeting.
we'll have to see how their councilors feel.
Public comment part is the public comment part, so if they're discussing something, could be deferred to the party. if they don't
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Does that cover everything that people wanted to talk about?
I can't remember stuff long, so I had to write it down.
Okay.
And
Your
time to public
presentation
speak,
stand up?
and it's time to
Okay.
speak, interrupting everything.
Tonight, on the budget items that were on the list, we can start with elected officials, and you can ask questions. There's actually no changes in this particular budget area. It's status quo, for it's the same as last year.
Did the insurance go up?
let's not go there.
I was just wondering when I get my insurance.
Okay, and I wish the whole council was here, but as we start this process, because we are making recommendations on layoffs and some reorganization, it is extremely important that we don't talk positions and we don't talk names. You really need to focus, as what our presentation was about, was focus on the dollar amounts and the specific areas that will have the largest impact on our budget. Okay?
Because realistically, all you can do is dollars anyway.
Excuse me?
All this can be done at this level is dollars anyway.
Right. And you're not going to be making any votes or recommendations, you know, you're just going to discuss it and get some ideas of how you might change it if you would like, or reduce dollar amounts, and then when you'll have opportunities to go back and through each article or each department and make your final recommendations.
So elected officials are pretty much status quo.
Yep. Okay, any questions on that? The contingency, which should be the next one, should mark these up. Is also the same. That has not changed.
Now, there was discussion on this last year, right?
Yep.
As far as changing the dollar value. And did what we actually talked about kind of fulfill what it was? I mean, I see that we're pretty much right. I mean, we had brought it from 5 to 10,000, right? Or from 7 to 10,000?
We had, last year we had budgeted, we had requested 15, and I think the final, we took 5,000 out and kept it at 10.
10.
But can you back up a second? And I remember at one point we had talked about grants match possibilities of $10,000 so that you could at least get a match going.
Yeah.
What are we doing, what is contingency?
It's for items that we didn't expect to surface, that unexpected expenses that may not fit into specific departments or things like that.
Kind of like your petty cash? I mean, I hate to say it that way, but I mean, it's an item of money that's on hand that's accountable, but not actually put in a particular line.
And we've
Yeah,
already
or
spent,
department.
we spent 4,400 already?
On contingencies, yep. And this year, I don't think we have, that I know of, any grant matches that have come back where we've heard on anything. So that's still hasn't been spent.
So it doesn't make any sense to put it all in nothing in contingency.
Now, the contingency does not get carried forward, it goes into.
Everything goes back, yeah. All the funds, except for specific items that were designated, go back to surplus. Any questions on that?
They want to say.
Okay. Insurance, and I'm going to let Jessica pick this one up.
Starting with workers' comp, basically the projection that you see there, the 106.5 is the town's portion of the current year 2011 premium, which is 120,000, with a projected 4% increase for 2012. That seems to be where we're trending. So the total premium for workers' compensation is 120,000, but the town's portion of that, with that 4% increase for 2012, is only 106, because a piece of it goes to the animal control officer, sewer, water department. So there's allocations there. The medical insurance, this is currently being budgeted at $510,000. We had an obvious initial increase in this account of 9%, but with staffing changes, it actually will save $10,000 with the proposed staffing changes in this line item. Part of this $510,000 is what we pay in insurance buyouts for employees that do not take part in the medical insurance, and that totals $67,600.
What's insurance buyout?
If they don't take part in the town insurance plan, we pay them what we would pay in a premium for that savings of them not being part of the plan, if they have insurance coverage elsewhere. It's a
Basically,
union.
Really?
Basically what it was, is say you work for the town, your wife actually works for a company that has really good insurance. So instead of using your town benefit, you actually do a buyout. It actually does save the town quite a bit of money. It seems like a big figure, but instead of spending like, say, $12,000 to $14,000, they actually have a buyout of a few thousand.
Right.
So the town actually is spending money, but yet it's still a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, we
Now,
save,
do
we
big
save
companies do
about
that?
10 to 12,000.
Some towns, I don't know about big companies, some towns do
Yes,
that.
they do. The cafe insurance plans, and if they don't take this, they get paid that.
Yeah. Some are given, like the town attorney, each employee is given X number of dollars,
Yeah.
and you can do with it as you please. You can either buy separate insurance or whatever. We have it fixed at a fixed dollar amount, which we reduced last year. It used to be a percentage of the cost. We changed that with the union contracts. It's a flat $3,000, and it goes up with a certain percentage, not based on, I think it's based on what the CPI is or something.
And that is the key factor too. I mean, some of the numbers we look at are really out of our control. I mean, they're basically negotiated through the union, and this is what the option is. And luckily, over the last couple of years, I have seen the number drop in a sense, or at least not drop, be secured. So if you were doing a percentage factor and insurance went up 9%, now you're going to be paying 9% more on your buyouts, which we've actually got away from that to a straight figure. So we know going into the year what that figure is going to be, which is huge.
This medical insurance thing, that's not anticipating the change to the other plan.
Either or, right?
Is it the
Right,
same?
I mean, but they were very similar in price. This is pretty much a rough ballpark.
I couldn't remember what it
Yeah,
came out.
they were very close in
Coverage
cost.
is different though.
Yeah. Moving on with the life insurance, I reduced that to $350 based on what you can see for historic spending. But it's insurance coverage that we provide based on a union contract. Accident insurance remains at $500. Unemployment, our contribution rate went from 0.89 last year to 0.96 for 2011. And this is applied to the first $12,000 in wages per employee. So with an approximate 94 employee count, that comes to $9,620.
I know I asked the question before, Mark, but life insurance, who's the beneficiary, the town or the family?
I have to look at the contract.
I would have to look at the
I don't
contract.
know off the
that's-
top of my head.
Can I get an answer next time?
Yep, you sure can.
If it's required by contract, my guess would be it's the family.
Spouse of family,
So,
yeah. It's a very small dollar amount. I can't imagine it's much of a policy.
I don't think they, demand that we cover them, have us get the money.
If we put a big policy on Steve, I think we need to be worried, so. We go through managers every other year.
You give them a suit with a big target on it each year.
I think you go through chairman like that,
You increase the undesignated funds by $500,000 every other year, though.
So the employee assistance program, it remains at $1,400. And you can see the rest of the insurances, I've kept the same as well. So.
Is the employee assistance program proving to be worth it?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's well worth, and just use it for an example, with this recent tragedy we had, they immediately were on site to help.
So it was them.
It was them, yes. So it's extremely good program.
Any further questions on that one?
I think we're good. I mean, a lot of it's out of our control, so.
Okay, next one is the legal budget. we've exceeded that budget over the years, and we're about to exceed it again.
We already have.
Already have, so.
Is there any way that can be reduced? You know, the attorney comes here, and he's here at the beginning of the meetings, when most of the time, 9/10 of the time, he's only required to be here for the executive session. Could you do, say, meet at 6:30 for executive session, so he's here and gone, and we don't have to pay him for all of those hours?
I tried to get the council to come at 6:30, that time doesn't work for them. Part of, and he doesn't show up usually at the beginning of the meeting. He always asks me, what time will you get to the section that he needs to be here? He doesn't waste our money. But what happens is what we've had our earlier discussions on, our meetings get drawn out to extremely long periods of times. Plus you have uncontrollable things that seem to be popping up, like recalls. We've had 2 recalls in the last 2 years. That costs us money. And the legal issues that we have dragged out are sometimes out of our control, or they're in our control, and we aren't able to come to a conclusion, so you get legal counsel involved. We use MMA legal counsel as often as we can. Twyla is always using MMA, but if it's something that our attorney is going to have to deal with, we need to deal with our attorney.
I have a question regarding, all his legal fees that he charges the town are right here, is that correct?
Yes,
What about the portion that goes to the planning board?
that's there too.
It's in this section?
That's all there, plus any outside counsel. We had an outside counsel, Tom Ainsworth, who covered the bankruptcy with Knight Celotex. He was a local person dealing with Chicago bankruptcy court. You couldn't afford, this $3,400,000 would be gone in
2 days.
2 days with their costs. It's $600 an hour for an attorney in Chicago, so we opted to have Tom do that. You asked for a second opinion on letters by another attorney, because you don't trust your full-time attorney.
I trust him.
Huh?
I trust him.
Well, I'm not saying, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying, you as a council asked for a second opinion. That costs money. These are things that we need to try to avoid to do.
Should it not, his legal fee for the planning board be reflected in the planning board, and maybe some of the fees that are charged out of the planning board?
Well, you could pull a report on what these legal fees were for. We have the documentation here, so if you wanted to break it down, we just
I
kind
know
of...
this is expenses, but there may be offsetting revenues, or could be.
Well, all the revenues that you take in for planning board goes into the general fund.
Right.
Exactly. So, and the hardest thing that we have, and I think what I've seen since I've been on the council, is the first couple of years, especially when we were doing the green bar reports, it was very difficult to pull in all the information in one spot. So even though you could separate this amongst many areas, you mean whether it's for the trails or the bonds or whatever, being in one place, at least you know this is the money we're expending. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not guessing how much we spent by lawyers by looking through 4 or 5 different areas. It's, this is where it is. And, you know, if you need to know the gritty of it, I'm sure that report can be done. But
I'm not trying to add work, I'm just thinking,
justify in
if we
different
were
areas.
able to, even within this account, break it down, you can see who spent the money.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even possible.
And I think it might be worthwhile too to just go back and look at further back to look at, you know, what are our legal expenses over the last 6 or 7 years, just so we have a baseline. Is that 3,400 reasonable, or are we doing like we do with the snow plowing and just putting it at half what we spend for the last decade, where it's, you know, made up bigger? And we'd like to try to lower that legal expense, but, you know, we have to be reasonable about what our cost of doing business is.
And I think, Mark, if I may, I think some of this has to be directed by our council, because unfortunately, there is a portion of this year that's been with our regular attorney and our outside attorney that has been directed by the council, that really, if the council was to sit back and make a firm discussion and a decision, we may not have to go that route, you mean? But it's really, if every time if we get asked to bring something to check the legalities of it, because that seems to be the trend thing these days of what is exactly the legalities of it, and unfortunately to find that out if we don't resource ourselves, costs us money, you know, so it's easy, it's an easy scapegoat saying that we're just gonna get a second opinion, but that first opinion and second opinion adds up to a lot of money,
Oh, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
'Cause he charges at an hourly rate, I just.
Yes, $170 an hour.
Which is not
Not
terrible.
bad.
That's not terrible.
A lot of lawyers charge 300.
And he's got tremendous history with this town, which is very beneficial.
I know
And a lot of their other tasks
Not
there
bad.
too. Yeah.
He's one of the best attorneys I've ever worked with.
So not only should $34,000 stay the same, it should be a goal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Not to spend. Yep.
Yeah, but you think a breakdown of, you know, where it's all spent would be helpful to us if we're, you know, gonna try to make some cost savings there.
But I do know that, again, the planning board, I know he sat around a lot, especially when we were talking about the zoning stuff
Yeah.
recently. And he's been there while this thing's gone on and on and on and on.
Well, probably not,
Wellhead
not,
protection.
yeah. It's not,
The wellhead protection, we
Yes.
spent a long time.
A lot of
And
costs on that.
electronics, and he's still working with that mess.
you, a lot of times though, it's probably better to, really, I hate to say it, because I'm kind of conservative, but he's probably better to stay there
Yeah.
and, and make sure everything is done right than having to,
Yeah.
Back up.
You can
Back up.
lose a lot more than the
Right.
3,400,
Right.
34,000.
So we're gonna leave that the same, everybody's okay with that?
We definitely can't back it up.
No.
No one wants to add to
Sure.
it yet, so.
Put it in zero, hope for that.
Next one's retirement. Most of that's all contractual.
So you got an 8.67 decrease, is that from having less people?
Less people.
Projection, yeah.
Yep. There's a reduction of 8.67% because of cut back in staff. Any questions on that? No? Social Security is another one. It's based on the employees that we have and their earnings. That, as you can see, is $11,500.
Still a substantial amount of money though, right?
Yep.
But it,
You can't change it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one would be Appeals Board. I didn't ask Mike to be here because it's a pretty straightforward, small budget. This year, we did add money for the secretary that usually has been coming out of wages of other departments, and we felt that it should be inclusive in this particular area. If they're doing work for the Appeals Board or the Planning Board, it should reflect that. It's not, and you're not talking a lot.
so that's Jody?
Jody and who does the?
And Beth.
And Beth.
It could be Beth or I or somebody, yeah.
Sometimes Twyla.
Mhm.
She's on.
Did we skip
Salary.
over technology, is that where we went, or is that?
No, we're gonna do that another night.
We're gonna do that another night. Where do we actually go to?
Appeals Board,
Appeals Board, okay.
and then we'll do Planning Board.
Yeah, actually, I was just looking at my book, just trying to.
Trying to get through the relatively easy ones.
I agree with that.
Warm up into the new stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It hasn't changed much.
No, it really has stayed pretty much the same.
1,700.
Okay, any questions on the Appeals Board? Next would be the Planning Board. Again, that's a fairly small account. We added in money for the secretary.
How did what happened with the National? 2010?
Year to date,
Professionals, AvCog.
AvCog. Yep. We had originally budgeted, when I first got here, $9,000 for AvCog fees, for them to do the updates on the ordinances to comply with the comprehensive plan. We're gonna overspend that because of, same as legal fees, but we can't seem to come to agreements on things. We go back and forth in asking them to change language, and it's not an exact science. So
We should be pretty close.
you should be pretty close to being done. I mean, this land use and the wellhead, once it gets to the council, we should be finished for now. But that's an evolving thing.
Well, the ordinances for all zoning changes got to be finished. Haven't done that? Pretty much done
What's that?
that. The zoning, the ordinances for all zoning changes.
Yeah, this will do it with the land use, if you get through that.
Yes.
Any questions on that?
Going on as long as I've been on the council, I haven't seen it get done yet, so.
We're pushing it.
As soon as we finish that, it'll be time for a new comprehensive plan update with new ordinances.
Yeah, we got another 6 years.
Right, exactly, then we'll run out and start again.
Okay. Next one would be hydrant fee, hydrant rental.
What's the number on
It's 03-315. Again, they assured us that we would not see an increase this year, so it stays at 292,000. Again, like we broached in our presentation, if you want to reduce that and fine tune how we do things, we should be talking to the water department about consolidation.
Does everybody understand how that dollar comes up? Because it took me quite a while to figure that out, how the hydrant, it's actually a 30% or a third?
30%.
It varies, but it can be up to 30%.
Up to
They choose to
30%.
charge us 30%.
Up to 30% of their annual operating budget, right?
So even if you did immediately do something to change that relationship with the water department, doesn't mean it was going to change. because
No, we
it's
can
set by
change.
the-
The
It has to be
PUC
resubmitted.
says that you could charge up to 30%, but you have the option of asking for less.
Yeah, but again, you have to go to PUC on
Yeah.
that.
And everything's based on what your expenditures are. I mean, that's how you base all of the rates and the income, and the whole budget's based on what you can justify the cost to run the water department.
And
So, I mean, that's,
population of the town.
No.
And the water department will tell you they've got some of the best rates
Yeah.
in the state, but townspeople are paying for a good part of it.
yeah.
How do we, let's say if we didn't want to consolidate, does the people have to say yes?
You would have to, you'd have to have a vote of the public,
Yeah.
and then it would have to go to the legislature to be changed.
It's a charter.
It's a charter.
It's never been tried before.
Yeah, the water department has a charter.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be changed.
but it's never been tried in this town before, has it? I don't,
There's been a lot of talk about it, never been tried.
yeah.
And when it was done in good intent, and probably, I mean, it was, the factor behind it, actually, what worked real well. It's just as time goes on, it's very limited for trying to consolidate and bring together resources with the way it is, because it is two separate.
Realistically, there's some money to be saved.
There is
Yeah.
115,000 minimum to be saved
Yeah.
for them. Okay, they would save 115,000. And we might save more on hydrant fees. But it's a very difficult task, believe me. I'm the consolidation king in this region. And it's not an easy task to get politicians to agree. Those of us who handle the finances will tell you it has nothing to do with the political environment. It has to do with how are we going to operate more efficiently and save money for the taxpayers. That's it.
Why would their savings be that much?
They wouldn't need the amount of staff that they have. For one, we would consolidate, they wouldn't need equipment because Public Works has the equipment. So Public Works would end up doing some of the work for any...
Public Works is just about maxed out as it is, isn't it?
I don't know
And their
about that.
equipment?
With equipment, they have enough equipment to do what they need.
Well, some of the staffing is probably more administrative.
Right,
It's
that's
not-
where the overlap.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the overlap.
There are certain requirements you have to have in a proper water district.
Yeah, you have to have a licensed operator,
No?
just like we do in the sewer district. We have to have a licensed operator. And there's certain procedures that you have to follow, and testing and things. But it can be done.
It would be different, but one of the discussions we had 2 years ago was on the hydrant rental was, and I had brought it up to one time, and it was probably, maybe it's unjust, but it kind of goes back to the idea of talking about. The thing is I realized when I was living on Main Street, back before I moved to Bowling Road, when I moved out there, that you don't mind paying as a townsperson for the hydrant rental, because I had a hydrant 100 feet away from my house, so my fire insurance was really cheap. You know what I mean? Because of that, you know? But then you move out in the country where there isn't a hydrant within 5 miles, guess what? Your premiums go sky high for your fire insurance, but guess what? You're still paying a part of the hydrant rental. So it's one of those things where, for the people in the outlying area that don't have the benefit of the fire protection, you're still paying the
We don't
same.
have water, but we still pay for it through this. Third of the cost.
And it's basically been explained to me, justified, as you're paying for the public safety of your buildings, your school, and your town
Well,
office,
that's-
which
We don't use
That's why
30% of
that
their water for
formula
that.
can be adjusted. It could be changed. I mean, when I read the thing, the formula was set up for who uses water. Well, 9,200 people don't use the water. So if you change it down to the actual users, that changes the whole thing in the formula a lot. Either makes rates go up or
There's
hydrant rentals go up.
approximately 2,200 users on the water system.
Yeah.
Compared to 9,400 people, or half, it's less than half of your people who pay taxes.
And realistically, if you figured it based on 2,200 and with a max of 30% for hydrant rental, you'd have a lot higher water rates.
yeah, it'd be tough. I mean, there is a balance. I mean, I think it is well regulated. It's just the idea, and we can't change that part of it. The only thing we could change is the idea of how efficiently we work within the town. And are there positions being duplicated
Yeah.
that don't need to be duplicated? And that's what it comes down to. And what we're seeing with the school and the town is very much the same thing. You know, we have, offices very close, and we duplicate a lot of procedures.
Yes, we do.
Maybe that's a good subject for discussion when we talk in the future about water towers.
It really comes down to political will.
I mean, just a small, being on the audit committee, just a small thing that I see, and this is just a tiny, tiny little piece of it is, we pay the town for an audit firm to come in and audit our books. And since the water department is a totally different organization, they actually pay a totally different audit people to come in and audit their books. And they're still auditing the town money. You know what I mean? And we asked our auditor, basically, if you were to do the whole thing, would the price be any different? She basically alluded to the idea of, really, I'm auditing the town, so what's included in your town would be audited. So even though that's a very small piece of the pie, it's still, when you see the duplication of things that happen, it's kind of like, whether it's auditing or lawyers, you're duplicating a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying the water department doesn't do a great job, because I think they serve the people really well. It's just the idea of down the road, where would be the savings, that's all.
Okay, everybody else set with that one?
One last question. You don't have to change the charter to consolidate, do you, if it's willing?
The town charter?
No.
Their charter?
Yeah.
You do.
Oh, you would, you'd have to amend their charter,
To help, to consolidate?
consolidate. You'd have to write a whole new charter and re-add something to our charter if it becomes a full municipal department.
Well, I mean, they could consolidate some services without actually consolidating the departments, right?
That's what I meant.
It's like, when you say Jesse, I think is that, like they could let us do their payroll or something, without having to be taken over completely, which would require a charter
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, we do a lot of it anyway. So we
Who's their payroll?
Do their payroll.
we
or
do their payroll, we
We could
sign
do-
their checks, I'm the treasurer for
Right.
them, so
We could do, in our window, we could do, payments, I'm sure.
we
right,
could do
for their
all the
stuff,
payments
right?
here, we do some of them.
We do, yeah, people come here and make payments.
I'll make a point to come here. I said, I make a point to come here and do that, because I think it's ridiculous that the water company is sending information to a company, and the sewer department sends it to a company. They consolidate it when they send us a bill, just so we're happy because we get one bill. But yet we're paying a company from two different angles to send us that bill. Rather than wasting 88 cents in stamps, rather than just getting along.
In this day and age, this kind of seems kind of bizarre.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, well, that's a new sentence.
What's that? Next one is streetlights. We have reduced that. Again, because we are in the process of removing lights. We're focusing on the more back road, rural areas, and staying within our ordinance to do intersections and things like that. So we are hoping that we will see a reduction.
We dropped that 10% last year. Was that legitimate? I mean, look at the numbers, did that actually play out?
I think it may this year.
But did we last year? Didn't we drop it by 10% last year?
Actually went from 100 to 90.
You went from 100 and,
2010 budget to 2011, went from 100,000 to 90,000.
But did we overexpend that? We didn't, how did we actually?
no, we didn't. We actually saved $10,000 last year.
Did we actually remove any lights last year? I was just curious how we saved that if we didn't remove any lights, that's all.
We anticipated it, it's not.
I know there's a lot of,
It's not over yet.
I know
We
there's a lot
didn't
of
remove
lights.
any lights and I know
My
of,
house.
so.
The 2009 actual was 101.
I don't think it
Yeah.
was at the end of the.
2009 was 101, 2010 was 102.7. I have the old
The old one, okay, is that the actual?
Projecting.
No, rates change, that's probably what
Rates,
the biggest.
rate
Yeah.
has gone down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing.
yeah.
Okay, any questions
Can't
on that?
control either, you know.
And we are in the process of taking down lights, so so we should see a difference.
Do
hopefully.
we take the lights down, or does CMP take them
Oh,
down?
CMP.
I thought they did.
Flag them.
All we do is pay the penny, that's all we do, we have no control over it.
We pay the what?
We pay the penny.
Oh.
Yeah, they send us a bill for it.
We're thinking the same thing.
What?
On the streetlights.
But the pole would have to come through, so.
Use a pole somewhere, I'm sure.
It's called hazmat, take it to the bulb.
Streetlights, let me just read to you, was that in their book or just ours?
No, we got this after the fact.
In order to realize a nearly $10,000 reduction, this is from Ryan, in streetlight budget, approximately 15 to 20% of the 600 streetlights in town will need to be removed. We have currently identified 60 lights in the following streets: Summer Street, Main Street, Village Street, Pinewoods Road, Ferry Road, Upland Road, Webster Road, Grandview Street, Fortin, Huden, and Farwell. We will identify additional lights to be removed if the budget is approved as presented. We're kind of hoping once they get removed, we get a little bit of feedback. If nobody really seems to notice a difference, we will continue to move on. But, so,
So currently, we've identified 10%.
10%, yep.
I know, it is that sure, flashing.
Okay? Community services?
That's the bus,
That's the
that comes
Worcester Main
through.
Transportation Bus,
Yeah.
which their usage we get a monthly report.
Oh, it has to be going up wicked
It's
with
gone
gas
up.
prices.
When the gas prices go up, and they're actually at a request by the users, and they have asked, they're gonna do a Saturday service to go out to the Thompson Mall. Because people have asked that, and Lewiston Auburn caught on to that, and now they wanna be part of that. So people are using the bus service.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's the thing, if you can schedule around it, I mean, that's the key.
Yes.
Why not? Are the lines still in? We can just open them up.
And they're very good about cost. I mean, they're really very, $26,000, that's pretty good service. We don't have to even buy the buses.
I see people are out front of my shop, standing out in the rain, right in the snow, waiting for the bus to come up, so there's pretty dedicated people on getting back.
I get
to work.
complaints about them having to fix them.
Yeah.
It's the bus stops.
What's the 27% decrease in the wages line there for? Yeah, it went from
What was that?
3,700 to 2,700.
I hope that was not a typo. That might have just been a keying error on my part.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, because I don't have any paperwork showing that there was a decrease.
We'll make that adjustment.
Yeah.
There's no reduction.
So what do the wages actually, will-
2010 spending was 2,000.
So it's still 2,700?
what are the wages? What is the
I'll
labor?
double check to make sure.
What is that wage line for?
Must be bus drivers.
Thirty-seven.
Yeah, the bus service, so you think it'd be probably that.
Well, it's not.
I don't know, we don't have anybody, I know, on the payroll for that.
No, you got senior programs and everything else.
Yeah, that's right, so it actually is.
You have to look that up. I
Yeah,
don't really
I was
know
just
who that
curious,
is.
that's all.
Yeah, it's a good question.
It's being expended, so it's going somewhere.
Going somewhere.
But it's 3,700.
Well, yeah.
Well, we could leave it at 27.
It looks like the expenditures were 2,000 and then year-to-date was
I'll
1,000.
check into it and make sure there isn't a reason that it should go back to 37 and find out.
Find out whose wages that is.
Right.
Okay?
2,000.
Miscellaneous public services is the same as last year. It's AdCog, Historical Society, LACO, Memorial Day, Maine Municipal, and Moxie Day.
This one is public services.
The land that was on the corner of Route 9 and Upland, where the yellow schoolhouse is, that's been started for, is that actually town property? Is that part, is that,
I think that's Historical Society.
that is actually been moved over to the, I was just kind of curious, but.
I know
I don't know.
Al Smith takes care of it,
Yeah.
and we never were asked to do anything with it, so
Yeah.
as far as I know, it's theirs.
So when Route 9 got expanded, I mean, who was actually working with the?
Al
people?
Smith was, they were.
So they received some funds for that, for losing some property, probably?
Yeah.
I was just curious.
We
how that-
certainly didn't get any.
Well, that's what I was wondering, where it actually, how that was actually affected.
Because they weren't losing very much, they were going just to where the split rail fence was, and that was
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah.
'Cause I did ask,
But that was handled all through their group? it
yeah,
wasn't-
we didn't
Okay.
have anything to do with it.
So they can own the property?
Excuse me?
They can own the property?
Yeah, they own quite a bit of property, actually, go in there, have you been in their shop? It's all theirs.
Well, I thought it was all in the town.
No, we have nothing to do with it. We just fund them 2,500.
2,000.
2,000, 2,500.
So I know with economic development, when we talk about that, the TIF there, we talked about like moving like Moxie Day funds and stuff into economic development. Would that be for next year's budget or?
Yeah, that won't be for this year, it will be for the following year, it's a 2-year cycle before the state valuation changes.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions on that?
MMA?
Maine Municipal? I know that's been discussion.
But I think part of the discussion too is right now, we have actually contracted services through unions through MMA, and to be part of, using those services, we actually be part of MMA, so we really can't, we can't not belong to the group if we're actually using the services of the group. So I mean, I think the discussion we had at one meeting, it actually basically says, as long as we're actually using services of MMA and their contracted services that we can't control, it's very much like our insurance. Right now, we actually have our, what's that?
Membership.
It's a membership fee, and you can't use their health insurance unless you're a member, so it's really hard to lose the membership if we still have our.
You said we use a lawyer,
I-
their legal quite a bit.
Pilot uses their legal counsel
Training.
pretty regularly instead of Roger. I've made a couple inquiries this past week on some stuff that I didn't think Roger needed to be consulted on.
And that doesn't cost us more money?
No, it doesn't cost us more money. Plus, we get all of our discounted training from them, which is quite reasonable for, introductory type classes. Plus, if we go to the conventions or anything else, we get discounts on that because we're members. So there's other benefits besides the legal fees.
I think we've seen some issues in the past of concerns that come through there, but I think the thing that we have to understand is like belonging to like BJ's and never using the services. I mean, at that point, the membership's not worth it. But the idea, if you're gonna pay the money for MMA, you just need to use every benefit you can and make it worthwhile.
And we advocate, they advocate on behalf of the municipalities. I'm on the legislative policy committee, and there's 72 municipalities or representatives that serve on that. And we express our opinions about certain legislation. One came up today, it was kind of interesting, nobody really had a handle on it, because it had to do with shellfish and changing the law and how they harvest it. And we're all looking around the room trying to find some town that actually does that. And there was nobody there, so they're gonna have to do research. Nobody do the impact.
They also help you with job searching too.
Yeah.
Finding us a new town manager.
Yeah, you pay for that, but it's not very much.
No, it was a pretty substantial amount of money, but actually, if you would actually had to pay somebody
Yeah.
to do it,
It could be like Lewiston and Auburn and pay $25,000 to get a headhunter. And MMA would do it for anywhere between $4,000 and
it's
$8,000.
like $4,500, I
Yeah.
mean, $4,500 or $4,700 to get the service.
Plus, they do contract negotiations at times. They have quite a range of services, and we don't use them all. But
Salary surveys.
But we use $8,000.
they can be frustrating sometimes. I
Yeah.
get quite PO'd with them at how they do things and not real happy, but for $8,000, I think we get a good bang for our buck. So. And they're on a calendar year versus fiscal year, so a little bit different. Okay? Any comments on that or anything else?
We could barter with them, give them $4,000, tell them we're just gonna use half the services.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, general assistance will be the next one. Again, this is a reimbursement program. Our governor changes it. There's been some discussion about DHS and how they do things with GA. But right now, and we haven't even been paid for last year, have we?
No.
They owe us about 50% of this from last year, and they haven't paid it yet. They will.
Sooner or later.
Eventually.
It's like the hospitals, they pay sooner or later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty busy place sometimes. And Judy, who, you have contracted services with Judy Goddard, she goes above and beyond the general assistance job for us. I mean, she does a lot of work.
She's definitely a life contact to many people in town.
Oh, yeah. She does a lot outside of this, such as the senior programs. She went the extra mile in this recent tragedy for the family. And I don't know how she has the time or the emotions to do it, but she does.
And she runs some of the events like the Thanksgiving dinner, she
Yeah.
coordinates that.
She coordinates that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does a lot of good stuff. Passionate about Lisbon. Any questions on that? Okay.
That's good.
It would be nice to get another Rotary Club going here.
Oh,
Because they
no, yes,
provided such a service to so many people in
I
town.
think they just lost so much membership over time, that it was
We
like.
did,
you know,
we
you had
did.
a handful of people.
I was the
trying to do it.
first female Rotarian in the
Really?
area. Matter of
Wow.
fact, before even Lewiston or Brunswick had a female member. We lost one member because of it, but others were, Jack Rogers was very, very welcoming to me and very helpful.
I think it was a really good service.
He was.
And the whole group was hard to lose that.
Yeah.
Struggling to make up for it.
Okay, abatements is next, and last year was the first year we actually put funding in that, at the request of Mr. Maines, and as you can see, we had some adjustments last year, 61,000. This year last year we budgeted 10, and year-to-date we're almost up to 9,000, so it's,
To be another active year.
yeah, it's an active year, and as you go through, and hopefully we fund the reval process, it will become even more active. Any questions on that?
Since you actually would overexpend that is one of those areas you can actually.
Yeah, you can overexpend, and that's what, generally your overlay helps cover that cost. Okay, let's just quickly go to the health officer before we get into the debt service thing. Health officer really hasn't changed. She does a great job, very thorough.
Which number is that?
That is number
4414.
4.
Excuse me, 04.
04.
415. We're required by law to have a health officer. This is a contracted position, just like Judy Goddard and GA. Again, I think we get a serious bang for our buck for this money.
Definitely.
She works hand in hand with all our departments that have impacted police, fire, code enforcement. She is very professional, does a great job. I kind of wonder why we don't give her an increase for the rest of the employees when she's contracted.
She goes out and inspects restaurants as well.
Oh, yes, that's part of her job,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen the reports that she does, go around and test all the restaurants.
It's not always good too. I mean, she's come up with some,
Oh,
she's
she's,
definitely protecting the town. I mean, there's no question.
Well, she's
about it.
closed down restaurants before, there's no question about it.
Yeah, she doesn't, I think she misses a beat.
No, she doesn't.
And in the last year or so, we've actually even put her on with some of the events in the park and some of the Moxie Day. I mean, there's a lot of little events now that she needs to participate in too, which is over and beyond what she used to do, so. Any vendor that comes in that's actually getting a permit actually has to go through some type of
You want to give her an increase?
evaluation, yeah.
You want to give her an increase?
You know, if she's gonna continue doing service for that, I think we're all set.
That's a good idea. Okay, and next thing is, and last for tonight, is debt service. You currently are obligated to pay the $481,867 through our bonds. We're proposing a 125? 820?
What's that, I'm sorry?
The 825.
850.
$850,000 bond for 10 years. You should have the spreadsheet in the back. This is inclusive of your revaluation, which is $325,000 over a 2-year period. This is a 10-year bond. It includes a roof for the MTM building, which is continuing to leak, like I said. It includes finishing all the windows around the MTM building. It includes a addition to the public works, so you can become ADA compliant. You've been ADA incompliant for quite a few years. You haven't got called on it yet, but eventually you could be. So that includes that. Some miscellaneous things, such as $15,000 for some work in this building on the police department floors, and that was it.
Sounds good.
Huh? Is that it?
Yep.
So our point behind recommending this, okay, is our first year is just around $16,000 in this particular budget that we would pay. It's strictly principal. It would go up after that, but if you do a reval, huh?
Strictly interest.
Strictly, did I say principal? Strictly interest, I'm sorry. The rates, if you look at the rates that you would pay at the current, it's still very reasonable. 4% is your highest in your 10th year. If you choose not to do this and you put off and you try to do a 4-year revaluation, you're going to finish your reval in the 5th year. It will go into effect, and then 5 years later, you're going to have to do it again if you do it right. So it's very prudent if you're going to try to do your revaluations, to do it in a 2-year period, so you have all this time to spend, not having to do it.
So the bond that you want to take out now for this year, will have money for finish the reval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They will finish the reval in 2 years.
Yeah, boy, I bet it's gonna be hard, so.
Now,
I,
you've got to continue the process to
I
clean
know,
up your real estate.
I'm not,
I
but
think
it's
there's
gonna,
more people out there that think we need it now.
yeah.
seeing why.
People that got to increase the tax bill and watch other people's go down.
I'm looking at the
Still-
assessing department, and I'm thinking, what a waste of money we had. What a freaking waste of money this year, in the past 2 years, then money that could have been put to a revaluation.
It's
Jessica.
water under the bridge at this point.
Jessica answered a
You've
question.
had many years of, and it's been since 1990,
I know.
since you had your last reval. Prices have changed considerably.
1980.
Well, and it's
No,
not even,
1990.
it's not even,
1989.
Yeah,
And it was in effect 1990, according to Mr. Van Tynen.
well, it's not even just that, it's the fact that you need to look at it from a taxpayer perspective, that it is not fair and
Right,
equitable
right.
to all of your taxpayers to not do this revaluation.
Right. The question I had always had, and we had bandied it around and whatnot, is, okay, so how many bonds can we add to our indebtedness here and be reasonable? So I asked the question, and I looked up some stuff, then I asked you a question. You gave me the answers, and I left them home. But we're allowed to have a total bonding in this town, including school and airports and everything
Municipal
else,
water,
of
sewer, yeah.
15% of our valuation.
Yeah, which is about roughly, that 15% comes to roughly 90,
Yeah.
Million.
We're nowhere close.
yes, 90 million. I was trying to think of the exact number. It's just under 90 million
And we're
in total.
absolutely
And
nowhere close.
we're nowhere even near that. Where our total bonded indebtedness is
17.
under 20 million.
Under 20 million.
Yeah, it's
We
17.
actually-
Under 18, actually.
Well, we do need a revaluation really bad. I'm on the Board of Assessment Review, so I started doing a little homework for our upcoming meeting on the 31st. And I was talking to my daughter in Lisbon, and I told her how she could check her valuation. And she called me back a half an hour later, she says, this is strange. there's on her page, the same initial, last name, what her last name begins with. Near the bottom of the page is a property in Lisbon, 4.5 acres, zero valuation for land. Zero valuation for land. And the property itself is valued at over $200,000.
You have over 4,400 parcels or pieces that are taxed in this community. And if you're gonna do it, this is the time to do it.
I'm going to bring that up at the.
Well, I still
Should
think the selling, you can use that indebtedness ratio stuff as a selling point too, because we're so.
And it's
Well, and
only,
even from the
It's like water
presentation
pump,
that we gave on Tuesday night, you can see from the, I think it was 5 municipalities, surrounding municipalities that are at 100% of their valuation, their mill rates, for the large part, are under $15,
Yeah.
for a mill rate.
When the
And-
valuation goes up, the mill rate comes down
Right.
because the
Exactly,
town.
and it
Right.
becomes fair and equitable
To
to
run
your,
it.
to your taxpayers.
and it still bases on what you spend.
Right.
It's, if you control your expenses and keep those down or within reason,
Right.
and even if you have to go up, if you grow incrementally, slow amounts, if you have to, because things do get more expensive. But, and that's the other reasons to, just give you an example, if you had built your public works garage that you had proposed 4 or 5 years ago, by today's dollars, it would have cost you over $90,000 more because of the inflation to do it today. So the longer you put off these things, which Lisbon has a history of letting to put things off until they get beyond repair or where it costs you a lot of money, this bond will finish the MTM Center. I mean, you've been pumping money into it in a positive way. You have new boilers, we've got grants to do some of the windows. That building is used tremendously by the public.
I think
And,
it's
Mark's
smart,
usually in the
I think it's smart to put the MTM Center with the rest of the building.
Yeah.
It's popular.
Same with the
Might
public
as
works.
well.
We've invested good money in the public works. We've fixed the brick, we've insulated the inside, we have a brand-new boiler. That didn't cost you anything. And Roger says we can do it for less than what we were given, and everybody believes we can.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think that's.
So that would take the Public Works building off your plate, just regular maintenance. You take the MTM Center off your plate, just regular maintenance. And you'd have so much behind you that you wouldn't have to spend money on or think thoughts on about keeping up with things.
And that's not even considered,
We're gonna give some payback.
that's not even considered the payback of if you look at between the public works, which is basically heating the outdoors, and the MTM, which is just slightly above heating the outdoors. Once you heat, once you actually insulate and make those efficient, I mean,
Oh, E.T. Smith is on there too.
yeah, if you look at what we pay a year in actually heating the MTM building, I mean, there's a return for your dollar over and beyond the idea of
Yeah.
just what you're paying out. I mean, you're actually gonna earn some back. And I mean, it goes back to even just some basic stuff that we looked at when we first came on the council. It's kind of like the grammar school, the one we just sold and it's very redundant. I think we have a $15,000 a year budget just to keep that, just keep it heated. So, I mean, the building is what it was. I mean, it was just amazing, the money that we're expending. I mean, that really, it was just money going out the window, you know?
And on top of that, your economic development, and I, Director, were talking this afternoon, if you have good infrastructure, it gives the image that this community takes care of what they have. And you're seeing that with your school, you're seeing that with your public works garage, you're seeing that with the changes we've made in MTM. And people like, what I've heard, is the citizens like to see these things.
Realtors call it pride of ownership.
Yes, it is.
I forgot to ask the school department, Rick Green, Tuesday evening, when he was going over the school budget, how much savings they've realized from the improvements of the high school, replacing windows and everything.
It's only been the whole season.
I
Yeah,
know
you'll
it
probably know by
isn't,
the end of the school year. You'll know how much you saved in. It's hard to judge that with the price of fuel, but we locked in, so it should be consistent. But in order to make this bond for the public to buy it, it really needs to be sold to the public, because it's cost effective, it makes sense. You're not gonna be able to borrow money at this price for much longer. I don't think.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, it needs to be used everything you can to sell it.
Yeah.
My
Can I add a-
question on bonding isn't directly related. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, can I get a breakdown of that bond? Like what, you listed all the things, can I get a
Yeah,
paper?
we have that.
You're supposed to give us a copy of that presentation, which I haven't seen yet.
It's on the website.
Oh, okay, you
Yep.
said you're gonna email it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I can definitely email it to you. I must have missed that comment, I apologize. You will have the
It's
presentation.
all there, Jim, everything is there.
You want one too, Dot?
I wanted a breakdown of the bonds.
Oh, the bond,
It's on the
yeah.
website now, by the sounds of things, right?
Yeah, it's on the website now.
Take off, guys.
I was on there today and I,
Huh?
I gotta take off.
Oh, okay. We're almost done anyway.
The one thing, may I add something? My first year as being chair, not sitting on the council, we actually spent the whole night, we had a workshop on our debt and our bond debt. And Chief Brooks actually did a PowerPoint, which nothing was, his PowerPoint was a big stick pointing at something, so it was, that's what he called his PowerPoint. But we actually broke down exactly all the bonds we had, how long they were for, how long they've been running, and basically gave us a gauge on where we were to the communities around us, how much debt service we had at that point in time, and if we were, how much money that we would borrow to actually get to the people around us. And that way you can actually compare what the communities around us have actually already invested in their community and why they're paying so much. But if you look around and people say, geez, I drive through Thompson and it's beautiful, they got all those nice buildings and everything. Well, you can look and see that on their debt services of where
That would
they're
be
at.
great for
You know
the
what I mean?
hearing.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
And the same thing with Auburn. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at Auburn Hall and what, I mean, if anybody's ever been in that building, it's absolutely beautiful, just like the ones in Thompson.
they asked them, the taxpayers.
Well,
they
yeah,
Yeah,
talked
but ask the
about that.
taxpayers how they like it, but they voted for it.
The one in Thompson looks like, let's build a town, right, to go to this.
But my point was to have something like that some nights so that people can understand, you know, where we are and over the years when we've actually gone out to bond and the reasons we used it for bond and how those bonds in the past have actually paid off, what we've gotten from the bonds that we've paid in the past. And
Yep.
that was kind of important too, because sometimes it's not really easy to see the value of a bond, to borrow money, but if you look back and say, these improvements were done in town by the bond, you know what I mean, and whether they were large or small, and, you know, explaining how recently we just did the front of the school with a small bond, and that dollar for dollar was actually a big benefit, you know,
Wasn't that part of the stimulus money for the high school?
partial.
Partial.
Partial was the bond, yeah. It was actually a split, it was
As
some,
was
The
some
bond
of
is being
the
paid for by.
modern projects.
yeah.
There was one thing, I remember something very well that Mr. Van Tynen said. When you reval, your first year of the reval, the taxes should stay exactly the same, or maybe drop a little bit. So basically, I think, to sell, get the money for the reval, for the honest bond, we're probably gonna have to make sure that they're not beat around the bush, but the people are gonna have to know that when they vote for it, that year, the taxes are not gonna go up, not a dime, maybe it'll drop a little bit.
One of the things I realized, it's a 2-year evaluation, so it's actually not gonna be almost at the 3rd year that you even understand, that any of that information comes into play. So you have 2 years that we're gonna be working off the same information we have.
Yeah, but
So I mean,
that's-
it's gonna be a long term. I mean, some of the stuff you mentioned about staging and some of the commercial and the trailers and stuff, but, I mean, most of the evaluation is gonna, I mean, they really don't put it into play until the evaluation's pretty much is
Right,
done.
they have to wait till they're all done.
Right.
But he is working on things, I mean, we're paying him, and when we get to assessing, we can go through that. He's still a part of the assessing budget and staying on board to continue the work he's doing. So hopefully, he won't be as much work and maybe go pretty smooth.
I would hope that would go up to a bid.
Well, he's already under contract with us, so,
Yes,
yeah.
but should still go up to bid.
Question on the bonding.
Yes.
Just a general question. We've talked about energy prices and gasoline prices and oil prices and all that stuff. How do you get the natural gas people who run a line right down through the center of town to become our community or whatever more dispersed with gas? Do we have to bond it? Do we have to
No.
go infrastructure-wise to do something?
Depends on what they're going to gain from it. For the school, they're going to run the lines to the school at no cost to them.
Yeah.
Because, one, they're a big consumer, the two buildings. Second, the cost of getting the line there is really quite inexpensive. And they have a formula. I've talked to them last week or this week, maybe Monday. And I asked them that question. I've been chasing them, but what would it cost us to go up Main Street, to go to MTN, to go to Campus Commons building, to branch off and so the citizens would have access to natural gas. And just to get up to Main Street, to the MTN building, and to Campus Commons is $113,000.
So where does the
Okay,
gas
but-
station fall? Does it follow, excuse me, does it follow 196 right now?
Follows 196.
Yeah, it goes all the way to the gypsum.
Well, that's an awful lot of money for a little short distance.
Well, that's their cost.
Yeah.
My point was, there are lots of cities in this, or some cities in this state that have natural gas.
Yeah.
How did it happen? They didn't, the natural gas company didn't just decide out of the goodness of their heart to pump it into the town. It must have been treated like a sewer investment or something.
I
You
don't
had
know.
to tie
That's
in
something I'd have to look into. I
Some of
know.
these
well-
towns may not be, I mean, we actually have a strictly a third-person vendor here that actually is, their revenues are all taken in from that. It's very much like our streetlights versus Lawson streetlights. I mean, Lawson actually maintains their own streetlights,
And
right?
owns them,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So, I mean, if you have a city that actually has its own natural gas
But-
department, you mean,
but
you can
there's-
actually
but-
do that, you know?
But the person who's paying exorbitant amount of money for fuel, oil, on the end of the pipe, even you, down there, you're paying a whole bunch of fuel, you can't afford to run the gas pipe to your place.
I would
But we
imagine-
as a community could.
Yeah, I would imagine that they would go in and do a study similar to what the cable companies did years ago.
And guarantee so many
And even
hookups
now,
and
they need
whatever.
to have so many hookups to make it feasible for them to
Now,
run their lines.
if the
in.
Super Walmart went into Charlie Allen's field, Charlie Smith's field up there,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, they would, for no charge, they would
That's
run it
what
right
I'm
up Main
saying.
Street and they would be there.
It must be
The
some,
usage would be,
something.
I could definitely find out how other communities have done it. I know the town of Gorham didn't have gas for years. And
Right.
they all have gas now. Westbrook has it, Portland has it, Wyndham has it, so I could
Well,
definitely.
It's
you know, as
the
we go down the
idea-
road, we're gonna need an alternative. to oil.
It might be if we start talking more about it, maybe they'll think it's more of an interest.
Yeah.
And then they might, you know,
New economic developer actually we've had this conversation. He actually has been fielding phone calls from public
Yeah,
asking
so
about
have
it
I.
and from businesses. So
Yeah.
it's something they know that we've been talking about and
if people talk about it, then they might start thinking, you know, maybe we could make money here.
Yeah.
Well, if-
Well, we have the contact, and we have made touch base with her and their company, and we're on the radar. And the school has had conversations with them, and they're moving forward with their thoughts, so.
Anyway, I think it'd be a future subject, but a subject that could be.
Absolutely.
I heard Bill actually make a statement a couple times, and maybe this is a totally wrong place for this, but he talks about large companies that have our interests in our town that generate possible revenues for us from the taxes. Do we actually collect any taxes from the natural gas company for the pipe work in town? We do.
We do, they pay personal property tax.
They do, okay. So the more they run, the
The more.
more it's gonna cost them, not just for the application of
Well,
putting
it
it
looks like
in,
there
but,
could be a deal made.
yeah.
She has a formula,
It's all over the-
right on her
Yeah.
computer. She plugged in the distances, she knew exact distances to get up to those buildings, and within several seconds, she
There
had
it
a
was.
cost for me.
Well, maybe we could battle with them. I do it all the time, it works great, right?
Well, the thing like Main Street, I mean, if you were just going up Main Street, and it was say 20,000, you had 20 businesses, and they each gave $1,000, I mean, you could actually deal with that quite easily. It's just when you get into residential areas, it's just It's kind of like a
Well,
water
in
pipe.
residential areas even, you could run the pipe but, you know, to get it run down there, you could have an automatic guarantee, I'll sign up by whatever.
And timing is everything, because once, like right now, 125 Main Street is expected to be paved, and once that's paved, you can't touch it for 5 years.
Yeah.
So you
Well, I don't
can't,
think we have that worry,
so, okay?
Did you want to,
Any other questions?
did you want to look
See you
at,
all next Tuesday,
I
7
think
o'clock.
she- I think she's actually, Steve, I think she's trying to make a point.
No, I just didn't know if you wanted, what we're looking at for time, if you wanted to attempt finance
Oh,
or tax
that's right.
collectors
You
or
want to do
not.
finance? We got time.
Sure.
Shouldn't take you very long.
Yeah, well, they're easy.
We are going to email that presentation.
Absolutely,
I'm
I'll
sorry, I
go
totally
do it
forgot
now.
about
That's
that,
okay.
Finance?
Yeah, 01155. So as we discussed in the presentation, what you'll see is a 1.75% increase in the wage lines, as well as this reflects a reduction in hours and staff within this department. And all the supplies and everything else maintains the same, so. This is where, one of the departments we were looking at for potential reduction.
And partnering with the school.
And this
Right,
is
in consolidation with the school.
Yeah.
So is that the, reflected in that 25% decrease?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And one thing I think we have to understand is if the way the budget's put together this year, if for some reason that number was to change and it was to be put back to where it was, it would affect pretty much the health, the
Yes.
disability.
Yes,
the-
and that's something to keep in
Yeah.
mind with all the positions, yes.
With all the
Yep.
positions, it doesn't just change this one page,
Exactly.
it changes all the other pages.
It
So
changes all those
Social Security,
benefits.
retirement.
So there's a lot of changes in this that would have multiple effects, not
Yes,
just here.
it's not just their
'Cause if you-
salary.
Because if you look at this number in all practicalities, this doesn't represent a 15.5 number.
Right.
This really represents probably more like a $22,000 to $24,000 number. I mean,
Yes.
that's just a rough guess, but,
Yep.
I mean, if you
That would be
add up
correct.
different segments, right?
Mhm.
So that's it.
And we're assured, we're not assured of anything, but we're under the assumption that even with this reduction, there wouldn't be any difference in services. Actually, services would maintain at a status quo, right?
Yep, the school would, we would be consolidating with the school, and I would have one full-time and one part-time for the pieces that we still need to maintain within the department.
Now, would that, the part of it that was being consolidated by the school, would that all be done strictly out of their office?
Yeah.
Would that person be actually going back and forth, or?
No,
No.
they would be strictly
one.
out of their office, yep.
And is this going to be the implication at the same time of the every other week non-paycheck versus direct deposit? And that all is part of this same?
Yep, we already have buy-in from the union, one of our bigger unions, to go to every other week on payroll, and everybody's gonna get direct deposit.
So wouldn't that actually help on the other end of the postage and that type of stuff? Would there be some savings there or not? I know it's not enough to affect our budget.
I don't think we
but
mail checks.
No, because we don't mail the paychecks.
You don't,
No,
just basically
that
print
would-
them and that's it.
Right, yeah, they get handed out, so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And again, I know
But
that just.
there will be some savings down in the supply line because we won't be, if we go to direct deposit, we won't need as many of the
But yet,
payroll.
people still like to print up copies, and I mean, there's still gonna be,
Piece of paper.
there's still gonna be a piece of paper
Right.
somewhere, but.
Yeah.
What's
The
that?
website.
Are you gonna do tax collector as well?
Yep,
Yep, we can do tax collector, yep.
as long as everybody's all set with finance.
Any questions on finance before we move on?
Now, that doesn't affect their budget at all.
Nope.
By the sounds of things, from listening to the school board, it's basically a zero. Yep.
They're adding 66 employees, which is, they equate that to doing the work for Durham and stuff like that.
Pretty much, right?
So no more questions under the tax collector. You will see an increase to the wages to include for a part-time clerk. And I don't know why the manager budget, is yours populated, the manager budget?
Yeah.
Okay, I just must not have an updated sheet then, so, sorry. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so you'll see an increase in the wage line for, to maintain the 2 full-time counter clerks and add 1 part-time. To me, that is vital for the front counter, because if I have 1 person sick, that leaves 1 person at the counter. And 1 person during tax time cannot handle the workload, and we do hear about it with the people. Even with 2 people, we hear about the, some of the wait times.
With the new, and I know it wasn't pushed this year, but with the new, with the new ability to be able to pay electronically, is it possible for people to actually electronically pay the taxes from home now, or is that strictly for other elected?
No,
Does that come in
that's like a whole, yeah, there's deeper implications with the, having them be able to log in from home. We have to be really careful with identity theft issues and what we could potentially be liable for. With the way we have it set up now, it's all through a third-party administrator, so we retain nothing. Some of that would change if we were to accept the payments online. It's something we could potentially look to in the future, but it'll come at a cost.
Does the state, when you actually register like things online in the state, have they already jumped over that hurdle, or they just don't care about it?
They're third party.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's a third party.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
When people registered their vehicles online through Rapid Renewal, we actually lose the agent fee, the $3 agent fee. That gets deducted out of what we receive. So it's.
I was just curious if there was, I mean, I don't say in the office, but yesterday I think we actually, make the checks, you run to town office to pay, and it would have been easy to just go online, click a few buttons,
Yeah.
and it'd be done. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
I mean, when we're looking at efficiencies, even, to me, that would be really great, even though
Yeah.
there may be some cost back
Does
there.
the town accept bill payer checks for taxes and stuff
Bill payer checks?
like that? Like from your bank, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Electronically or
No.
only by mail?
Check.
Yeah.
They still do accept cash, though, too.
Yeah. And there's still a lot of people that come in and pay with cash,
Yeah.
but.
The bill will be kind of thick, so they got to reduce it down.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how few people actually do rapid renewal compared to the number of people who could register cars.
Yeah.
Everybody, initially when that first started, everybody thought we were going to lose all kinds of revenue.
Yeah.
And it's really maybe, what,
You wanna talk to
10%,
somebody.
15% of
You
the
wanna
most?
I can tell you what, it's nice,
It's really
when you
your
forget the
call.
registration on bill, and you
Yeah.
want to register at 11 o'clock, and then before you leave, you go online and do
Yeah.
it. I mean, I hate to say, there are some benefits
Buy your fishing
to,
license.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a shame that we lose some money in the process, but
Or
the
when you're in
efficiency.
Florida and need
yeah.
to renew your registration of the car.
So you will see a few decreases between the mileage and professional development, just with looking at consolidating between the departments. With usually there's more than 1 person that goes to a training, so you carpool, and just other savings, and looking at historic spending, just cut down some of the.
What have we done in the past not to have that extra person? Have we just not had the services that we needed, or would we steal somebody from a different department and try to make a difference? I mean,
What you mean, what have we done without this part-time
Yeah.
person in the past? We've actually lost 2 people up front that we haven't replaced.
so it isn't the idea, you're actually replacing them. In the past, we've lost a full-time position, now we're replacing that with a half position, in a sense, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you had
One
a
and a half,
full-time
wasn't it? I
person.
believe it was 1.5
who we
people
didn't
that we
replace, and then you lost a half-time person.
Right.
Who was sick. Passed away, unfortunately, because she was awesome. But, and it's what it's done if you have, like Jessica said, if we have somebody on vacation, somebody gets sick,
Right.
you have 1 person at that counter. And we are working on cross-training, but
Kathleen's great at getting out to the counter when she's needed, but it makes it hard for her to do the duties as a deputy tax collector, to be at the counter full-time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so
it's, it doesn't take much to have, one person get sick and be down, and, and it makes it hard too with the trainings. These ladies need to go to the MMA excise tax trainings and the motor vehicle trainings, and there's conference call training, Web Express
Steve,
trainings that they
you have
do.
any back history in tax collecting?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, would you go to work a counter, I mean?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I can do that. I actually am certified.
Like that.
That's where I got my feet wet.
Yeah.
I never told you the story, when I started my first job in the field, my tax collector and treasurer, I was there for 1 week, and the taxes were gonna come the next week, and she looked at me and she goes, "You're on your own next week. I'm on vacation."
Welcome aboard.
Learned by fire. It was great. She's still a good friend, so I am certified in all those areas.
Good, I was just teasing. That was
No, I know.
just kidding,
I shocked the girls in Green one day when I got out of my office to help them, and they were backed up. Oh my God, a manager. Yes, I can.
But you're supposed to know. Yeah, exactly.
So we meet again Tuesday.
Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Everybody's okay with this particular one?
And, I think we're supposed to be here at 6, right?
What's 6? Okay.
Are we meeting with you, or are you guys meeting on your own?
We're supposed to
Prior to.
meet on our own.
Okay. All right. Great.
Sounds good.
yeah, it's okay.
Put some-
We probably need to send out reminders.